After the NBA draft combine, who did we change our opinion on the most? Plus, Gordon Hayward didn't show a whole lot for OKC. What do we make of that situation? And the blueprint, what teams are winning in the postseason? We'll discuss all of it today. Locked on Hornets.
You are Locked On Hornets, your daily Charlotte Hornets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
In a minute, cuz we live.
It's Locked On Hornets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. Thanks for making us your first listen. We're free and available anywhere you get your podcast, and that includes YouTube. Today is I can already talk. Today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA and use code all lowercase LockedOnNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. There's Doug Branson. You can find him on his Substack, everyhornetsboxscore.com. I'm Walker Mail. You can listen to me, WFNZ, every weekday from 12 to 3. And no, we are not beefing. We are doing an episode together, people. We are not beefing.
Speak for yourself.
Yeah, you know, I joked about me. There was a segment that we did a while ago, and then I mentioned Malik Monk, but it never saw the light of day. And I feel like ever since I brought Malik Monk up as a guy that maybe we miss here in Charlotte, I haven't been on with Doug ever since. So maybe it is you beefing with me.
That's right, yeah. But people are noticing. People are noticing that we're doing more shows without each other. And all I have to say is, you know, we're almost in the summertime. Like this is the time when we're going to take breaks and we're going to, people will be off. So just hang on. We're in the off season. We're in off season mode, folks. But we're still happily married and doing this show every day.
Well, and you have a baby.
That's right.
What do you want from me?
I'm potty training right now. Also, baby is potty training.
That's a good one. I like that one. That was bam right over the head.
Classic joke form.
It's such a it's a good one too. It's such a classic. Who is it? It's Andy Jeselnik who does a great job at that. Much more brutal. Anyways, let's move on. The NBA Draft Combine. We've been talking about that the last couple of episodes. You shared your opinions with Nada. I had Sam Purley join me on Friday. But now we're kind of combining these segments as we do our episode together, Doug, because you had the conversation with Nada about some of the players at the Combine who you changed your opinion the most on because of their performance, maybe their interview process. I was talking to Sam about the interview process and how important it is. Well, now if we bring those together, the Stephon Castle comments are pretty interesting. I played him on Friday. We'll play him again so we can both talk about it. Here's Stephon Castle on how he sees himself transitioning from the college game to the NBA.
Just being more on the ball. I feel like my true position is a point guard, and I feel like the past couple months, I had to sacrifice for, the better of our team, and, I worked out for it. So it's not anything to, really harp on or, be bitter about. But, I mean, yeah, that's just some of the things, being on the ball, shooting off the dribble a little bit more and, just stuff like that.
All right, so let's go back to back on this because I want the effect of harping, like Stephon harping on, hey, guys, I'm a point guard. He's getting out the megaphone and screaming NBA teams' faces, I'm a point guard. Here he is again on his strengths, transitioning also from UConn to whatever NBA team drafts him.
I mean, I would say, I can do it on both ends, and I take pride in doing it on both ends. I feel like I have a pretty good offensive skill set. And, I mean, like I said before, I feel like I wasn't able to showcase it as much as, I probably wanted to.
There it is.
But, I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, we still won a national championship. And I feel like that shows that I can be on the court and play in, so many different ways and still impact the game.
All right, Doug, what are your thoughts on the comments here? From the guy, by the way, that has been mocked by far the most to the Charlotte Hornets at 6.
Well, look, if you start out by saying, I'm not bitter about this, I guarantee you're bitter about it.
Yes.
Like, he obviously was not pleased with his role. He was pleased with the result of getting a championship, but I guess somewhere inside him, he feels like the sacrifices that he made at UConn are potentially hurting his draft stock. He probably doesn't like the idea that he's being mocked to the Charlotte Hornets at 6. He probably wants to be, like anyone would want to be, a top 5 draft pick. He probably wants to be number 1 overall and sees this. Look, especially I think if you're hearing constantly over and over, this is a weak draft, and you're seeing yourself mocked outside of the top 5, that probably is a little bit disheartening. He obviously is confident in his skill set, right? I mean, he believes that he can be an impact player, but he believes that he has to be on the ball to do that. And that's a problem because the Charlotte Hornets have a guy named LaMelo Ball who is going to be on ball. They have a guy in Brandon Miller that they just drafted very high that they're going to want him to be on ball and receiving the ball and shooting the ball a lot in the next couple of seasons. And so to draft another player in Stephon Castle who wants to be that, not only wants to be that, but considers sacrificing his own play as a little bit of a detriment to him, I think would be a problem. I mean, to me, we talk about changing opinions. Like, this completely changes my opinion about whether the Charlotte Hornets should draft him, and that opinion now is that they shouldn't.
So, okay, that's what I wanted to be clear, and let's just reiterate that. He's on your no draft list now.
I think he has to be unless it's drafting to trade the pick. If someone else is interested in Castle and, like Portland or San Antonio or Memphis, those teams that are right below them on the draft list, if they're interested in Castle and you want to move back a spot or two to take a Ron Holland or a Dalton Connect, then I'm totally about that. But I don't think adding Stephon Castle to this roster makes any sense anymore. By the way, that's kind of like, I don't understand what Stefan Castle is doing here, unless he really believes he can push his draft stock above the Charlotte Hornets. And if he can, more power to you, and then try to finagle your way. But you could be costing yourself millions of dollars here by, telling teams, hey, I'm only going to play point guard. And if you're not willing to do that for me, then look elsewhere.
Okay, I'll tell you if I think he should be on the do not draft list after the break. Coming up next on the Locked On Hornets podcast.
That's a good tip.
Don't go to sleep on the Hornets just yet.
Classic joke form, classic tease form. I will tell you my opinion a little more so on Stephon Castle. Plus, we'll start to look at the blueprint for the teams that are winning in the postseason the last couple of years. That's still to come here on Locked On Hornets. Before I tell you those opinions, I want to tell you that this episode is brought to you by Yahoo Finance. Wouldn't it be great if you could see all of your investment and retirement accounts in just one place? With Yahoo Finance, you can consolidate your views from multiple accounts into one hub and access the expert analysis you need to tend to your entire portfolio with confidence. Let's get straight to the point. You want to grow your portfolio to deal with the rising costs of inflation, to pay off your debt or your mortgage, pretty much anything standing in the way of you and financial freedom. With Yahoo Finance, you can get access to the news, data, and tools that you need in order to help reach that financial freedom. For more than 25 years, Yahoo Finance has been the brand behind every great investor. They're the #1 finance destination, producing a holistic look at the financial news cycle, including breaking news, original editorial perspectives, analyst ratings, and independent research, plus customizable charts, so much more. Securely link your brokerage accounts for a unified view of your wealth, including 401k and other investments. A comprehensive perspective is what sets apart great investors, and it's how Yahoo Finance ensures you have the insight to look at your wealth in its entirety. For comprehensive financial news and analysis, visit the brand behind every great investor, yahoofinance.com, the #1 financial destination, yahoofinance.com. That's yahoofinance.com. This episode is also brought to you by Prize Picks. Get in on the playoff action and win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks as you and the world's best players take the game to a new level during the NBA postseason. You can now win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks, and you can turn $10 into $1,000 with not only the NBA postseason, but hockey. When college basketball rolls around, you can do that again. Baseball is going on right now as well. Plenty of action to get in on at Prize Picks. Download the app today. Use code LOCKEDONNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. That's LOCKEDONNBA. Download the app today. Then use code LOCKEDONNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. Thanks again to Prize Picks. More Locked On Hornets ahead. Stephon Castle wanting to play point guard. He made that very clear in a couple of the combine comments. I think that was like a 4-minute Q&A that he had, at least that was on the Hornets YouTube channel. They did a great job consolidating all that audio and then putting that up there. So
it's great. They put the audio out there of a guy saying, but you have to wonder, Walker, you have to wonder if Stefan Castle and his team have been seeing all of these mock drafts, including this latest mock draft from Kevin Hicks of SI.com, who has the Charlotte Hornets taking Stefan Castle out of UConn with the number 6 pick. He writes, the Hornets take another shot at an intriguing guard prospect from UConn. Trey Mann doesn't deter Charlotte from making this pick. You have to wonder, Walker, if Stefan Castle has been looking at these mocks and they say, look, we're not going to Charlotte. We got to say whatever it takes. We'll say we don't like Bank of America. We hate NASCAR. We will say we like Eastern North Carolina barbecue. We like it with vinegar. We will say whatever it takes to stay out of Charlotte.
So, okay, if you look at the teams on either side of Charlotte, Detroit has a couple of guys on ball, and Cade Cunningham and Jaden Ivey, so that doesn't really work. If you're trying to parlay yourself into that 4th spot, that's possible, and that's what makes sense with San Antonio. You go after Charlotte, like if you were trying to tank your value because you hated Charlotte so much, not saying that's happening, but if that's what you were trying to do, 7 is Portland, with Scoot Henderson and Simons in the backcourt. Yeah. You also have San Antonio at number 8, so that would be the way that you would tank it to go to 2 spots.
You better hope Wemby wants you. Wemby's running these drafts, by the way. I mean, yeah, I think this guy out of France, and I'm going to butcher the name, but Tijan Saloon, like that guy's going to San Antonio at 8. I'm just guarantee it. Like Wemby is running these drafts.
It feels like Koulibaly is going to be traded to San Antonio because he's running the draft so much. I don't think that I think not being on the draft list is a lot because for me, and I get your point, if you draft somebody that would be going into a situation where they're already going to be unhappy, not a great start, for sure. But I wonder if it's just one of these points where you're like, look, man, you're too good at this. We're not going to just let you fall because you want to play on ball a little more. I'm not going to let you fall to another team and then wreak havoc on the rest of the league the way that you're able to, or just become a hit, right? Like become a hit at 5, 6, or 7. I'm not going to let you just fall right past us because, well, you want to play point guard. I just can't do that. I would talk with Castle and say, look, you're too damn good defensively. Like you eat up guys on the drive and they have to kick out and they turn it over too much. I'm sorry. You're too good defensively. You're too good of a cutter. You showed that you could hit enough shots when challenged in the Final Four. Hey, Stefan, I'm going to have to draft you. Now, you can have some of this primary ball hit, not even primary, more so secondary ball handling in the second unit. But the other thing here, Doug, is maybe there's a little bit of LaMelo Ball insurance baked in here. And he's not a point guard. I don't see him as a point guard. But maybe there's that tiny bit that you could sell to him for him to have a good enough attitude over the next couple of years or so and then see where he is then. But especially in a draft that's this lackluster, and you can still go on one of the more bankable traits, which is Castle's defense. That's one of the more bankable items that you can go with in this draft. I'm not going to pass up on that because he's saying all of this stuff, even though I'm totally with you on being a little wary of it. I get why you have the opinion you do. I'm just still saying, look, man, I'm going to draft you. You're too good at it, and we'll figure it out down the road.
So I would be totally with you if this were a different draft and there was generational talent to be had, and Stefan Castle was one of those talents that didn't. I mean, all of these guys have question marks. Right. He's not that. So, I mean, I was with it last season when I was on the Scoot wagon. My whole thing was Scoot is too good to pass up on because of fit. And I still believe that despite the struggles of his rookie season. I still think he's going to be a really, really good player. And Stefan Castle may be that good player as well. My concerns are these. He is not that level of prospect in my mind. Also, I'm still stung by the James Bouknight experience. And this would be different because Castle would almost have a guaranteed role off the bench. That would be part of the sales job, I think. You'd have to be really confident in Charles Lee and Jeff Peterson and their ability to get into a room with this kid and say, look, I know you want to be X, and you'll have an opportunity to be X. It would be interesting if part of the sales job was, listen, we don't know about this LaMelo Ball guy. We don't know if his ankles are going to hold up. You may be the starting point guard by the middle of next season.
You don't want that to get out. You don't want that to get out. Yeah, no, don't say that.
That can't be part of the sales. I wonder if there's a wink, wink. It rhymes with Schmall. Schmello Schmall. I don't know if that could be part of the sales job, but you would have to be confident in their ability to sell him on that role. But then again, you've got this now, you've got it on record. And so in the back of everyone's mind, when they see Stephon Castle being frustrated in a Charlotte Hornets uniform, they're going to constantly wonder, is he upset with the role that he has or the lack of role that he has? And then the other thing too is like, you've just hired a new head coach. You don't want to make things more difficult on him immediately. You certainly don't want to have a Borrego book night situation with Charles Lee. And you're trying to build a culture. And you've got a guy in Brandon Miller who seems like so suited to establish that mentality and that culture in the locker room. And you've added Charles Lee. Okay? Let's just keep that moving. Let's keep the good vibes moving and not introduce these elements that could break all of that down before it even gets started. I want guys that want to be here and want to play a role that they are given, and everybody get on the same page and not have this rookie diva stuff right off the jump.
Yeah, I hope it's not diva stuff. And it's more so him trying to plead to the world that has questions about his offense. Like, I wonder if he's just correcting on all of the offensive concerns, like, hey, on ball, maybe I'm a little worried about it, more so with the shooting. I wonder if he's saying, look, I had to sacrifice at UConn, and it just comes across as rookie diva. But it does come across like he wants to play one. It feels like that.
And we're going to see with the individual workouts. If he decides, I'm not going to work out for Char, if anyone besides, like, I mean, really, Sarr. Like, I think Sarr there's enough consensus around Sarr at one that if he just wants to work out for Atlanta and maybe Washington, fine. But all the rest of these guys, like, if you're not working out for Charlotte, then I don't, honestly, in a lot of years, I would say that's just part of being the Charlotte Hornets. People skip Charlotte Hornets workouts. You've got to consider all players. But with this draft and how wild it is with guys going from like 3 to 12, if you don't work out for Charlotte, then I'm out. Honestly, I'm out.
With the previous regimes, that meant that they were going to draft you if they didn't work out for them. That's how it was going to go. And that's just what the MO was for a while. So I hope that's not the case with Castle. Let's move on. Let's talk a little more about the blueprint to the postseason, how teams are winning, and also, still to come here on the Locked On Hornets podcast.
Don't go to sleep on the Hornets just yet.
We got to get to our Gordon Hayward takes. We already had the former Hornet PJ Washington convo. We didn't have the Gordon Hayward convo. Yikes. We'll get to that in just a moment. Coming up, Locked On Hornets. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. It's winner take all time in the NBA and the NHL, and FanDuel's giving you a shot to bring home a big win of your own. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 to bet on spreads, money lines, player props, even more than that. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon. Make every playoff shot count. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. More Locked On Hornets ahead. Doug, wild games yesterday, really for very different reasons. We saw the Indiana Pacers move on to the Eastern Conference Finals, and we also saw the game that everybody was excited for most last night between Minnesota and Denver. Minnesota got up to a 2-0 lead. Denver won 3 straight games. Then everybody said, okay, it's the Nuggets. They just decided, you know what, we're the champions here. We're going to turn this thing up. Minnesota answers with a dominant performance in Game 6, and then they come back on the road to beat the Nuggets in Game 7. And by the way, like 2 monster-sized teams, jumbo-sized squads where Jamal Murray is the smallest player for Denver that is in the starting rotation. He's like a big, strong, physical guard. And then for Minnesota, you have the 2 7-footer thing going on. I mean, Anthony Edwards is like, Mike Conley is the smallest player that they have, but even still, like, just length all over the place. I know you were kicking to me before we started to record that small ball is dead, according to Doug Branson.
Well, small ball is dead. I mean, teams are sizing up and teams are skilling up. They're getting skilled big men, but they're getting lots of skilled big men because that's how the league is adjusting. Small ball did exist, and now leagues are adjusting by getting big guys that are skilled. And so I think the Hornets need to continue to adjust that way. It's what, it's I bring it up almost every episode, but they had 2 lottery picks, or 1 lottery pick and then 1 right outside the lottery, and they had the opportunity to use both of those picks, and they decided to trade one for a worse pick. And while everyone's excited about the guy that they ended up taking with that selection and Nick Smith Jr., NSJ's tiny, and they had an opportunity to stock up centers, and they didn't take that opportunity. And so, I think that's why, look, as talented as Stephon Castle is, guys are starting to take notice of Zach Edey too, and he's moving up. And in fact, in this SI mock, this guy's got Zach Edey going 9 to the Memphis Grizzlies. I think the Hornets ought to take a look at him. I think, obviously if Klingon falls, I don't think he will at this point, but if Klingon falls, you got to take a hard look at him too, and continue to size up. But across the board, and the Hornets, to their credit, except at the center position, have been doing that. I mean, Brandon Miller, if they can get him to a point where he's playing 2, and Ball is a tall point guard, so they're continuing to do that. I think they have the right idea, but they got to keep pushing the envelope and make sure that they don't. I mean, it's how long have they just gone into a season without a really NBA level center rotation? It's been a long time now. They've got to figure that out. Whether it be trade, free agency, whatever, they've got to come into this season with some experience and some talent at the center position.
Well, no, a couple things. One, I will say we can discredit Mitch Kupchak for a lot of stuff, but he valued size in the draft, and even if he didn't go after centers a lot, he valued size on the wing, right? Yeah. For Miles Bridges, P.J. Washington, LaMelo Ball at the point guard spot, and then even Brandon Miller. I mean, goodness gracious, it feels like the smallest, and that's what he valued in the second round. They traded up to go get Devontae Graham, who was a small player, but other than that, I mean, there was length on top of length, and he loved the versatility, especially defensively. Then you start, okay, small ball, is it dead? Well, what's funny is, like, it always felt when people talked about small ball, they really meant skill ball. It wasn't necessarily, I want 6-foot players out there all across the board. And then the center, I'm cool with him being 6'7". The reason that you were cool with having a 6'7" center was because they could shoot. But if you have Karl Anthony Towns, who is 7 feet and is one of the best 7-foot shooters of all time, you would rather have that. Yes, please. Like when the Giannis's are starting to be just a little more frequent, it's not necessarily as much of a unicorn. We want the skill ball, and we would rather have the skill in a 6'8" or taller body compared to a 6'5" or shorter body. And it does feel like with Denver being jumbo-sized, Jokic being the primary playmaker, but even Michael Porter Jr. being a 6'10" knockdown shooter, not in this series, but usually that's the idea, and Jamal Murray being a stronger point guard, you're right about that. I actually think that's a reason, if everything works out health-wise, to look favorably on the Hornets right now. Like, you need another center. Like, for sure, you need a better center depth. You need a better center rotation. But LaMelo, 6'7", Brandon, 6'8", 6'9". We'll see what they do at the wing. But right now, Miles is kind of like that 3-4 hybrid at 6'8", 6'7", stronger. They have size across the board. Now they just need the center rotation. But I do think that would help. And to have the 2 tall shooters, Doug, that's what's nice about not only just having a shooting backcourt. Golden State has the best shooting backcourt of all time. That's really valuable. But the fact that the Hornets have a couple of really good shooters that are also 6'7" or above, there are ways to create some advantages with the squad that you have right now in a league that is starting to get bigger. We're here. Like, as far as the trends, we've been following that a little bit. If we can just shore up the center rotation, then maybe we can also compete once we have the skill part and then once we have the talent part on this roster.
That'd be great if Poku figured it out. I mean, we don't,
Yeah, that's the idea. And he hasn't figured it out really in the NBA. We had some nice moments, but we got more Poku moments in Charlotte than OKC did with Gordon Hayward.
Oh, my God.
I didn't see that coming. Like, how shocked are you that he was a complete zero? Just a complete non-factor for Oklahoma City as soon as he stepped foot in that city.
It's crazy. I saw a great tweet that said number of fans that hit like half-court shots in the playoffs for Oklahoma City, 3. Number of shots that Gordon hit, 0. It is incredible because the trade, when it happened, we said it made sense for both teams because Oklahoma City, really, that's all they did at the trade deadline, and now they're getting criticized for that. And you would think if that's all you're going to do in the trade deadline, that you would utilize the piece that you got back, especially because it seemed like the Hornets really, there was one player that I can't really figure out if it was Mann or if it was Micic, but there was a player there that they really didn't want to get rid of, and the Hornets hammered him on it. And so if you're going to give away that much talent, you would think that they would use that talent. It is really incredible. I think that him being hurt to start, like if he had been fully healthy, ready to get into that rotation and make a difference right at the trade deadline, like a lot of those guys for Charlotte did, maybe it would have been a different story. But it's almost like, they were just scared to take away time from some other guys that were contributing late in that season. And Gordon obviously unhappy. I mean, the quotes, from him outside of this are, that he was surprised, he was unhappy, he wanted to do more for this team. So I don't think he's long for OKC. I don't think he will be re-signing there.
For the NBA, what team? Right? Like what team?
Charlotte, vet minimum?
You're stealing Josh Klein's bit now, vet minimum. But yeah, if you look at Gordon Hayward's game log, he played the first 7 games of this postseason until you just couldn't justify it anymore. Game 1 through 4 against New Orleans. And then, well, I guess not the first 7, but games 1 through 4 against New Orleans. Then the first 3 games of Dallas, and then didn't play again after that. Didn't log a single second. 9, 10, 8, 4. Those were the minutes logged in against New Orleans. 7, 5, 3. You're right. 0 buckets, 0 points. Just brutal what he didn't give Oklahoma City. And I think most people, if you listen to the Zach Lowe podcast over the weekend, he hammered him. And Zach really liked this trade for OKC because he thought Gordon was going to be able to help them. And he said you can make an argument, and I think a pretty easy one, that every single player they sent to Charlotte, Doug, could have helped them more than what Gordon gave them in this postseason. Micic, everybody, and I guess Poku wasn't a part of the trade, but in that trade, every single player could have helped OKC more. And Micic and Trey Mann, Bertans could have come in and hit a couple of threes at least and stretch the defense. Like, they didn't get anything from Gordon. And I know some people might say, well, guys, it wasn't necessarily because they thought Gordon was going to come in and then wreck shop, getting to his spots in the half court like we've seen him do before. I know that they valued Gordon Hayward being in the last year of his contract and then freeing up $30 million. I totally get that. You still thought that they got the best player right here, right now in the trade. You got the guy that you thought could help you out the most currently in all of the players that were swapped, and yet he turned out to be the worst. That was a shocking, maybe shocking is too strong, but I was pretty damn surprised at that development of him just being a complete zero.
Well, I think part of the problem was that Oklahoma City really wanted to evaluate the players that actually have a future in Oklahoma City. They viewed this, right or wrong, they viewed this playoff run not as we have a legitimate title shot, but as we really want to evaluate everything that we have in all of these young players that are still on the roster, who we want to move forward with and who we don't. And they weren't going to move forward with Gordon Hayward regardless. And so I think that just generally hurt his ability to get on the floor. And then when he was on the floor, it was the Gordon Hayward that we've seen in stretches for the Charlotte Hornets where he's not, really making a big impact. Yeah. He's not assertive. He's not aggressive. And that's part of the problem, is that I think that NBA teams have really lost the idea of what Gordon Hayward should be for your team. And look, you can't have this many injuries as a player and it not take some kind of toll on you physically and what your gifts are and what you're able to contribute. And then I think that circles back into your mentality of what kind of player do you want to be? And so I think it's just everyone's confused about that. And to the question of, because the question will come up, does Charlotte entertain bringing him back on a vet minimum? And the reason that's going to be entertained is because Gordon was very high on the city of Charlotte, liked being here, signed here in the first place. And so would there be interest in bringing him back? And look, on a vet minimum, I don't know. If he's, I don't know. If there were no other options, if he's the only one that you can bring to the dance on a vet minimum contract, if there's some, and you're getting a Gordon Hayward who I would think after this postseason, seeing himself being on the brink of being out of the NBA completely, you might get a different version of Gordon Hayward. Again, if it's on a 1-year deal, if it's all right, come here, let's see what we can do. Let depth. Are you going to deny depth at this point as a Charlotte Hornets fan? I don't think so.
I feel like I've left you alone too long. You've been doing episodes either by yourself or not. The sickness. People don't understand the signs, Doug, and then they just let you get sicker and sicker. I've recognized the symptoms now. This is one of them. This is a glaring symptom of the sickness starting to come back as we do a show together. Gordon, you
Nick
want
Batum,
more?
is he available? Just bring all the people back that have been.
Yeah, look, vet men, maybe. He actually probably cost more than the vet men with how he played for Philadelphia. You have any more final thoughts before we end it today?
No.
Okay. Then it looks like you might have had something. That'll do it for Locked On Hornets. We need to get Doug some help. Thanks again for joining us, making us your first listen. We're free and available anywhere you get your podcast. That includes YouTube. Also, make sure you check out Doug's Substack, everyhornetsboxscore.com. And you can listen to me on WFNZ every weekday from 12 to 3 p.m. via Wes and Walker. Have a great rest of your day. We'll be back with you tomorrow.
I mean, would you rather see him or JT Thor? Just right now. Him or JT Thor? Tell me.